A particularly useful report that can inform your planning for teaching is the Item Analysis Report. For each question in a test, this report tells you the question number, the correct answer, labelled the answer key, the dimension or curriculum area being tested, and the particular skill being assessed. The middle columns tell us the percentage of the national cohort who were correct, the percentage of the state cohort who were correct, and the percentage of your group who were correct. You can look at each item and see how well your students did. A high percentage correct? Perhaps it was an easy item. Perhaps your students have a particularly strong understanding of this topic. A low percentage correct? Before you become concerned, check, was this a particularly hard item? These judgments require comparison between your group's percentage correct and the state percentage correct. The question is, how did your students go compared to the state? If 85% of the state cohort got an item correct, but only 80% of your students were correct, should you be worried? How do you make those similar and different judgments? Let's consider this for a moment. We're thinking about whether plus or minus 5% should be considered similar or different to the state. So if you had a group of, say, just 20 students, then 80% means that 16 of your students were correct. And if just one more student answered correctly, then your result would also have been 85%. Is your result similar to the state? I think so. One student here or there on this one-off tests is really not grounds for changing your programs. However, if you've got a big group to sit the test, say 400 students, then 80% means that 320 students were correct, but 85% equates to 340 students. 20 students, almost another whole class. Deciding whether your results are similar or different to the state depends on the size of your student cohort and requires you to make local judgments about whether the level of difference that you'll pay attention to this year is a particular percentage. We suggest approaching this analysis systematically. First, go through a printed version of the report with two different coloured highlighters, marking those items where your group is very different to the state. Mark those above with a cheerful colour, those below with a cool colour, and leaving those that are similar uncoloured. In addressing areas of weakness, take a look at the incorrect response options chosen by your students and those commonly chosen at the state and national levels. This will help you identify the common problematic thinking patterns and those exhibited by your students. You need then to go back and look at the actual test. Look at the question and consider the incorrect patterns of thinking that lead students to choose each distractor. A low result could mean that it was a hard item, but you can tell by comparing with the results of those from the state. What was the most common error? What pattern of thinking or common misconception might these students be following? What would be good questions to ask to check this out? What might be good questions to ask or tasks to set students to help them to change their thinking? You might choose to follow up on this by going to the report which tells you which options each student chose, and then you can identify students who hold particular misconceptions. There may be no obvious link between the students. Many misconceptions are quite common and are shared by generations between siblings and peers, but you might want to ask some local questions. Have these students who have a common misconception had some common experience? To recap, look to see if there are any patterns in your data. Are there any dimensions or skills in which your group shows particular strength or weakness? Don't forget to consider strengths as well as weaknesses. Capitalise on your strengths. What can you learn from the strengths which might be helpful in planning to address the areas of weakness? How will you address weaknesses? What explicit teaching points should be emphasised next time this particular topic is taught? From a curriculum perspective, consider the order in which the topics are taught and the importance, emphasis and time spent on each topic. These reports can provide useful information to inform both school planning and class teaching.